Hello everyone and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We have a really great show for you this week. We'll find out how the Oklahoma Quality Beef Network is doing amid record cattle prices. We'll also talk no-till with Jason Warren, but first we're heading inside the greenhouse to learn about tan spot in wheat. Bob, we're here in the greenhouse where you have a lot of research set up. Tell us how you and the team study tan spot.
Well, tan spot is one of those diseases that is difficult to work with to some extent. It's somewhat like leaf rust that we talked about in that it's a foliar disease of wheat, but it's different in that it survives on the leftover residue from the previous crop, whereas leaf rust blows into the state from the southern part of Texas and southern part of Oklahoma. Tan spot inoculum stays on the residue and is in the field, and that's why it's become so much more important with the emphasis on no-till wheat cultivation in Oklahoma.
And why is it important to study it in these conditions?
Well, it's hard to replicate or induce tan spot in the field to some extent. And so what we do with the greenhouse and growth chamber experiments is to get seed of the breeder lines that he's testing, and then they get planted into these individual containers. Now, after planting, the next step that Brian has to do is to create or obtain the inoculum to inoculate these plants with. And he does that by maintaining the cultures, taking those out, growing them on agar, on artificial medium. They'll produce conidia or spores of the fungus, and then he creates or makes a large amount of inoculum that he can spray onto the plants. And then of course they have to be incubated at the right time and temperature and so on and so forth. And then the end result is disease on susceptible plants and resistant reaction on resistant plants.
Let's take a look at what tan spot looks like on the plant. It's exactly what the name implies, right?
Right, it's very descriptive of the symptoms that you get. In this rack of containers here, which represents one small part of what Brian will be rating, you can see that on some of the leaves there are these definite tan spot pustules or lesions that are a result from that fungal spore being deposited on that leaf and then having the right moisture and temperature and infecting that leaf and creating that tan spot lesion. Now if you go down and look at the older leaves down here, you can see that a lot of these there's some tan spots in there. There's a few green spots, but there's a lot of the leaf is dead, and that's because this fungus produces a toxin that after the infection, the initial infection, will spread through the leaf and cause it to die. It's called a necrotrophic pathogen in that it kills the tissue of the host, and that's why this disease is so important, because it doesn't take very many of these infections to kill the entire leaf. And of course, if you kill very many of these leaves, there won't be any green leaf tissue to help fill the grain as the plant grows.
When does tan spot, if it's going to appear, typically show itself?
In Oklahoma, occasionally you can see it earlier, but usually it's about now, the end of February, and then especially through March, when you can look down into the lower canopy and look for the tan spot lesions, as you can see in these plants. Now again, like I said before, this is much more prevalent in no-till fields where there's a lot of residue. And of course, that would be the fields that you would most want to check for.
And then are there treatment options available this time of year?
At this time of year, of course, the only option would be use of a fungicide. And there are some fungicides that are effective against tan spot. The fungicide, quite often with tan spot, needs to be put on earlier because you want to stop this disease when it's just starting to get established on the plants about now or through the first part of March. In contrast, a disease like leaf rust, you typically will want to spray that more so when the flag leaves have emerged on the plants, because that's what you want to protect with leaf rust. But with tan spot, you need to get that application on earlier so you stop the disease from moving up the canopy.
And then in terms of planning ahead, there are some varieties that help with tan spot resistance?
Yes, that's what the end result of this process is to identify those breeder lines that eventually become varieties and identify those that are highly susceptible, but then also those that are more resistant. Now, there are no varieties that are completely resistant to tan spot. They can be overwhelmed by the right kind of weather conditions and heavy inoculum load, but there are definitely some varieties that can resist tan spot better than others.
And to look more at some of those qualities, there's a variety comparison chart?
Yes, Dr. Edwards and his extension duties, along with the help from me and some of the other specialists, come up with a variety comparison chart that lists the varieties and the reactions to all of the different diseases of those varieties, as well as agronomic traits and different characters, you know, tolerance to acid soil, so on and so forth. And of course the varieties will be listed into there as to which ones are more susceptible and which ones are more resistant.
Okay, Bob Hunger, thank you very much. And for a link to that variety comparison chart, just go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Several years ago, an Oklahoma rancher called to tell me of a method that he had discovered that was really effective in rewarming cold-stressed baby calves. You know, with these cold, wet winter nights that we've had recently, undoubtedly some of these calves become hypothermic, or their body temperature drops to very, very low amounts. The method that this particular rancher had discovered that he thought was effective was to put that cold-stressed calf into warm bath water. And he found that it revived the calf rather quickly, and he ended up then with a healthy, vigorous baby calf that was off to a very good start. Well, the scientist in me says, let's see if the scientific literature will support his theory. And as I looked, we found that Canadian scientists had actually done studies on different methods of rewarming cold-stressed calves. One of the experiments that they looked at took calves down to a very low body temperature of only 86 degrees. And then they tried 3 different treatments. One treatment was to bring them into a warm room temperature environment of about 67, 70 degrees and wrap those calves in a thermal blanket to warm them up. Another method was to put them under a heat lamp. And then the third method was what this rancher had tried, and that was to put the calves in 100-degree bath water. And what they found from that experiment was that with the first 2 methods, it took an hour and a half for those calves to return to normal body temperature of 103 degrees. But the calves that were put in that 100-degree bath water, it only took 1 hour, or 30 minutes less. And that's very critical as you think about the timing of a baby calf becoming vigorous, finding the teat, nursing, getting that first milk or colostrum in him is so critical for his health, not only in the immediate future, but on down through the rest of his life. So I think this is a method that if we have that warm water bath available and we find a really, really hypothermic calf, we can probably go a long ways towards saving that calf by using this method. Now we want to use common sense. Of course, we want to keep the calf's head above water. We don't want to drown the calf that we're trying to save. But it is a method that I think can be helpful in saving just a few of these very, very high-priced calves as we go through this calving season. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
The Oklahoma Quality Beef Network sales season has wrapped up, and joining us now to talk about it is Gant Maurer, who heads up the program. And Gant, it's been a tremendous year for the cattle industry. Did that hold true with OQBN as well?
Absolutely, Linda. Quite frankly, we weren't sure what was going to happen this past year with the record high cattle prices. In terms of enrollment and in terms of premiums for our cattle. But it was a wonderful year. Everything matched up great. We actually had a 16% increase in total cattle numbers enrolled in the OQBN program this year. And really what everybody wants to know is what is the premium they saw on their cattle. And we saw anywhere between an $18 to $22 a hundredweight premium for those OQBN calves this fall at these fall sales.
And for those hearing about OQBN for the first time, just give us a brief overview of what the program involves.
Absolutely. So really at its core, OQBN is a communication tool, increasing communication where we can help cow-calf and stocker producers market a product that adds value to them and to the feedlots and packers on up the food chain. Part of that is our VAC 45 program, and that's where these numbers come from that we were just talking about. So within that VAC 45 program, those calves have to be weaned for 45 days, dehorned and castrated and vaccinated properly according to one of our protocols. And then myself or your local county agent will come and verify those cattle on the ranch, and you can market those cattle as OQBN VAC 45 calves.
And the program's been around for a while. Have those numbers historically been at those percentages that you've talked about?
You know, they have. We've actually had this program since 2001 within the state of Oklahoma. This is a record high a premium we've seen in terms of a cash price. But over those years, it's been about an 8 to 10% of the total value of that calf is what we've seen in terms of premiums. So that stayed very consistent. And it's hard to say what the cattle market's going to do here this next year, next fall, but we're pretty confident to say that premium again will be between 8 and 10% of the value of that calf.
With spring calving upon us now, people kind of getting organized and making plans for the VAC 45?
Yep, absolutely. Now's a great time. We're starting to calve some of our cows out. To get with your veterinarian, get with me, and start looking at those vaccination protocols and what management protocols that you can do on your farm and ranch to qualify for the VAC 45 program. At this point in time, we could be looking at doing a branding vaccination on those lighter weight calves, and maybe starting to castrate some of those bull calves that we have in the pasture. The younger we can do that, the less stress it is on that particular animal. Again, always get with your veterinarian and get that vaccination protocol in place to what works best for your herd and the health of your animals.
And then in terms of the sales, once the cattle have been through the program, I know you get questions about how that works and what type of paperwork that go along with them and what sales they have to go to. Mm-hmm. Explain that a little bit.
Yep, it's a very easy process. Once you make those management decisions and on the farm or ranch, and we can help you with that along with your veterinarian. There's really some paperwork that has to be filled out, really a 2-page document where we verify what you did, when you did it, and what vaccinations you gave, including the lot or serial number on those vaccinations. And again, we step foot on the farm or ranch and see those animals and verify them for that particular producer. Now, Lyndall, the numbers that we talk about are the numbers that we collect at particular sales in the fall of the year. And a lot of producers choose to participate in those sales, but they don't need to. You can market your cattle once verified at any time or place that works best for your operation. And I think a lot of producers don't realize that. We want to do what works best for you and what brings the most value to your operation.
So then what is the overall benefit for the buyers?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. If they're going to pay 8 to 10% more for these calves, there has to be value there. And the value is the health of these particular animals. They've been weaned off of mama for 45 days. And in some instances, especially when they're bigger, we get up to 60 days that those calves have been weaned. So we increase the health, and really they know how to eat. One of the requirements is that they feed these animals, they supplement them where they can eat at the feed bunk. And so what that allows producers to do who buys these to take them home and they can eat immediately. What we see a lot of times is these lighter animals go straight to wheat pasture. They'll be branded, they'll be wormed, and then they'll kick straight out on wheat pasture for that. So the value is there in terms of health, and really it reduces death loss. Research shows that these programs can reduce death loss anywhere from 3% to about 0.5% through preconditioning programs. So that's really really where the value is. And this fall, the value gain was $1.30 to $1.40, and I know that's changed a little bit here recently, but the value was very powerful to the buyers on these cattle.
Okay, Gant Maurer, thank you very much. And for a closer look at those numbers Gant mentioned, and to find out more about the program, just go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Even with our cooler weather this week, the days are dwindling for grazing cattle on wheat and removing them soon enough for a decent grain crop. An early first hollow stem map through Tuesday, February 17th shows that over most of Oklahoma it's past time to check for first hollow stem, the green, yellow, and orange colored areas. In the red and red-brown areas, it's more likely time to have cattle moved. For wheat varieties in the middle first hollow stem group, the areas needing to be checked are in the southern part of the state. Those wheat varieties in the late first hollow stem group still have a ways to go before needing to be checked, except those fields in and around Carter County. Late first hollow stem varieties really do let you graze cattle longer and still harvest grain. Don't be surprised if you see cattle stay on wheat. With cattle prices high and wheat prices down, producers could easily decide to let cattle graze as long as forage remains. Our last round of precipitation was light for most locations in Oklahoma. 2 bands received an inch or more, the green-colored areas. Rates were above a ½ inch in the darker blue bands, but disappointing in the light blue and white areas. Maybe we'll see more with our next round of precipitation. Here's Gary with a long-term look at our current drought.
Thanks, Al, and good morning, everybody. Hopefully you're getting some type of precipitation as you watch this on Saturday morning. Now, this will be the last time we'll be on for a while, so I thought I would start off with the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map, show us where we are now, and hopefully when we come back later, we'll be in much better shape. Let's keep our fingers crossed. The latest U.S. Drought Monitor map shows us about 65% of the state is in at least moderate drought, and about 46% of the state is in at least severe drought. And those, of course, mostly across the western half of the state. Although we have seen drought and abnormally dry conditions, those are shown in the yellow, spreading into eastern Oklahoma as well. So most of the state is at least abnormally dry, probably 99% of the state, but the worst of the drought still remains in western Oklahoma. The long-term impacts continue unabated. This reservoir level map from the Oklahoma Water Resources Board shows most of the lakes across the western half of the state at least 50% below normal capacity. Now, some lakes are even worse off. For instance, Lake Altus-Lugert is down to about 9% of capacity. So lots of bad water woes out across the western half of the state as we go to reservoir levels and farm ponds. The reasons for those long-term impacts are obvious and explained by the long-term precipitation deficits. This departure from normal map from the Oklahoma Mesonet since October 1st, 2010 shows most of the state from about 20 inches to more than 50 inches below normal since the drought began. So it's going to take a lot of rainfall to get us out of that drought, but we can still have some improvements, and that's what I'm hoping for when we come back next time. So we'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
The USDA released its outlook numbers this week, and here to help us sort it out is Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist. And Kim, there are 3 areas that we want to cover. Let's start with farm income.
Well, USDA's numbers this time is based on computer models. You know, the WASDA report's based on surveys, and they're more concrete. These are just USDA's first unofficial estimates for 2015-2016. Farm income, $73.6 billion. That's the lowest farm income since 2007.
And then in terms of planted acres, what did the report reveal?
Well, they were lower planted acres for wheat and corn, and about even for soybeans. If you look at the wheat, all wheat acres down 1.3 million acres and corn down 1.6 million acres.
And then in terms of prices, how does that look?
Well, this is where the bad news comes in, especially for wheat and soybeans. You look at wheat, we had an average price of $6 in 14-15. USDA on this outlook is projecting it to $5.10 10 cents. Corn down 15 cents from last year's $3.65 down to $3.50, and soybean down $1.20 from this year's $10.20 to $9.
Now, for producers, this all may be kind of tough to hear. How do we think it could impact prices, this news?
Well, there's a long time between now and harvest. You know, the wheat harvest, winter wheat in June, July, the spring harvest in September, October, August, corn, beans the same way. We don't even have the corn and bean acres. Those official numbers won't come out until March 31. So there's a lot of time, and a lot of things can happen between now and harvest.
So in the meantime, what factors will the market use to determine prices?
Well, right now for wheat, they're watching the world situation. The U.S. price is about $1 plus above the world price. So there's some problems there, especially French wheat is cheaper. India is fixing to start a record harvest, and probably in about 3 weeks right now. So they're watching the world situation, and they're watching the winter crop situation here in Oklahoma.
Okay, and we know you'll keep us posted. Kim, thanks a lot. We're talking no-till now with Jason Warren, our Soil and Water Conservation Extension Specialist. And Jason, this time of year, what kind of advice do you have for no-till producers?
Well, most everything's just sitting here on the wheat and growing, and we're fixing to start putting fertilizer out and then those kind of things. But specific to no-till, one thing that comes to mind is assessing soil compaction. From now and through the spring, we'll generally have pretty good soil moisture, particularly on any ground that was fallowed to go to summer crops, and then this wheat ground's got pretty good moisture in it as well, in a lot of locations across the state. And what that means is that we can dig a hole or push a probe in the ground and not have to worry about that assessment being influenced by dry soil conditions. When the soil is dry, it's hard, and that's just the way it is. So you push a rod in the ground or a soil probe and it doesn't go in the ground. We need moist soil conditions to use those rods. If we can push it through the ground, then we know we don't have a compaction problem. But if we do hit a restrictive layer where that rod stops, we need to dig a hole, make sure that it's not simply a dry layer, and then go on from there. If it's actually a moist layer that's restricting that rod, then we can look towards alleviating that problem with deep tillage or the utilization of cover crops to break up that restrictive layer. And so it's a better time in the spring when we're wet than to wait until the summertime when things start to dry out.
So it gives you a better picture then.
Yep.
You're also working on a project involving on-farm demonstrations. Mm-hmm. Talk about that and how producers can get involved if they want to.
Yep. This past fall we received a Conservation Innovation Grant from the NRCS. And what it's aimed at doing is providing, it provides funds for us to go out and do on-farm demonstrations. And the title of the program is Locally Led On-Farm Demonstration of Soil Health Promoting Practices, which is kind of a mouthful. But what it means is that we'd like producers to think about what kind of practices, whether it's no-till versus conventional or different crop rotations that they believe would make their no-till operations more successful, or the utilization of cover crops, and talk to their county educator or their conservation district or their NRCS office about this potential for doing a demonstration. And then once we get those local groups together, we can design a demonstration for that region or for that county that would be locally relevant. A lot of times we do demonstrations and they may not be exactly what the producers in that area want. They may serve the broader spectrum of the state, but not serve the specific needs of a specific locality. So we've got these funds to try to do that, but we need ideas and local input into the program. So that's kind of what we're doing on the no-till. And then in the eastern half of the state, because a lot of pasture lands are more prevalent in the eastern half of the state, we're looking at different options for pasture soil management, starting off with just basic soil fertility and then moving into some overseeding of legumes and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity, and the sky's the limit as far as the ideas, but they need to be practices that the local producers and county educator and conservationists believe will work in those localities.
It sounds like a great opportunity to share ideas both ways.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
How do people get involved?
The easiest way would be to contact their county educator. This is a partnership with OSU Extension, the conservation districts, and the NRCS, and so any of those organizations you can go in and visit with them about this project, but you certainly go and talk to your county educators. All of them have been brought up to speed in general about the program.
And you and the team are also organizing the No-Till Conference. Tell us what you'll be covering this year.
The No-Till Conference is on the 3rd and 4th of March, and it'll be down at Norman at the National Employees Training Center. And at that conference, we'll cover a fairly wide array of no-till topics, including cover crops. We'll have some talks about grazing management on cover crops and utilizing those crops for forage. We'll have some talks about equipment, some herbicide management discussions. Just a fairly well-rounded discussion of no-till issues in the Southern Plains.
Okay, sounds like a great workshop. Jason Warren, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
The 2015 No-Till Oklahoma Conference is March 3rd and 4th in Norman. You can find out more and register online by clicking on show links on the SUNUP website. Finally today, we introduce you to the newest members of the SUNUP family. Savannah and Molly, the beautiful twin daughters of SUNUP's Dave Deacon and his wife Crystal. Congratulations to the Deacons and a special welcome to the Deacon girls who we're told are doing great. That'll do it for us. A reminder, SUNUP will take a break for the next few weeks for special programming on OETA, and we'll rejoin you with an all-new show on March 21st. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.